Good morning, lady bosses. Here we are, 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning, and ready to talk about boundaries today. So listen, I'm going to say something else right now to eat up some time, and I'll repeat it at the end. But somebody's here. Good morning. I want to do, is that Rachie? Of course it's Rachie. Good morning. I taught her well. I want to do a Lady Bosses Q&A a few weeks down the line. So I'm going to post something today. I want to start hearing some of your questions about business, about time management, organization, balance, topic today. Whatever it is you want to talk about. Good morning, Linda. Whatever it is you want to talk about, I want to have a day devoted to that. So I'd love to get some of your questions ahead of time. So I'll start posting it today and start to throw in some of your questions. But then I'll also take questions live on that day. So I don't know yet for sure when I'm doing it, probably 2 or 3 weeks. So plan on that. If you ladies missed it, morning, Colleen. If you ladies missed it, I'll talk about this again at the end. So anyway, okay, 3 of you are here. 3 of you are here. Okay, see, I have a different setup now, and my tripod is a whole lot farther from me than it used to be. So I'm nearsighted. So there are 4 of you here. So good morning. Good morning, Jane. Okay, so let's get started talking about boundaries. When you first think of the word boundaries, what do you think about? You think about restriction. You think about being fenced in. You think about being contained. In reality, what you're going to hear about today is that boundaries will help you to create freedom, which is just the opposite of what you would imagine. So this goes back to something I read 40 years ago or so. When my oldest son was born, it didn't take me very long to realize that that little boy was going to be my problem child. He was my strong-willed child, no question. And believe me, if you have a strong-willed child, you know it from early on. You don't have to wait until they're 5 or 10 to know. Good morning, Judy. You know almost right away. So I seeked out a book called The Strong-Willed Child, and it was by James Dobson. And let me tell you something, I could not have raised that boy without that book. And I had to read that book every single year because every year you're going through a different situation and it speaks to you in a different way. And it just helped me with all my parenting. James Dobson I couldn't have raised my kids without James Dobson. He was awesome. But he gave an example in that book. There was a study done once with kindergarten children. And what they did one day was take the fence away from their playground. And then they observed them. When they took the fence away, the kids came together and huddled in the middle of the playground. So then they put the fence back up. And as soon as the fence was back up, they ran freely all over the playground. Boundaries equal freedom because boundaries establish structure, boundaries establish safety, and they establish an ability for you to trust in your environment. And that fed into the strong-willed child because if you have one, and probably most of you have at least one, a strong-willed child will push you to your very limit because they are trying so hard to get you to break. But in reality, the thing they need and want the most is for you to not break, for you to be strong, for you to be the one who wins. Because if they win, they really truly lose because you have taken away the playground fence. So with a strong-willed child, no matter how they push you, and oh my gosh, my biggest memory of my son being the strong-willed child was when he was about 2 and going into his big boy bed, and he would not stay in his bed. Every night, I put him into bed, he'd come downstairs. I'd put him to bed, he'd come downstairs. And he cracked me up because he'd come down with his pillow over his face with the 2-year-old thinking that I can't see them, so they can't see me. Cracked me up. But he wouldn't stay in bed, but I would keep putting him into bed, putting him back to bed. And if you're a parent, I challenge you to disagree with me, but I think the hardest thing about parenting is to be consistent because they wear you down and they exhaust you to the point that you just want to give up and say, okay, just come sit on the sofa and fall asleep here and I'll take him to bed later. It's so easy to do that because parenting is so grueling and so exhausting. But that's where it becomes a job, right? That's where it becomes the most difficult job you'll ever have, is being consistent and not letting them win. Because like I said, if you let them win, you've caused them to lose because you've taken away their safety. One night, thank God, there was a Phillies game on and my husband was watching it in bed. because I was just in the bedroom next door. But he got out of his bed, I counted, 25 times that night. And 25 times he got a swat on his bottom and got put back to bed. And I know we live in a day and age where we don't spank anymore, but we did 40 years ago, and it was not child abuse, and it worked. But that's a story for another day. But after 25 times, he finally didn't get out of bed. And you know what? He never got out of bed again because he lost. He knew he wasn't going to win. But it is just like that playground fence. Hey, Lori, that if you prove to your kids that you are the one in control, that you are the one that is stronger, you give them a safe place to grow. They don't feel safe if they're the boss, because a 2-year-old can't be the boss of his life. And a 2-year-old is going to be scared. To know somebody's bigger than him and stronger than him and gives him the safety of boundaries is what's going to make him grow and thrive as a person. So critical. Hey, Amy. So this is why boundaries equal freedom. This is why boundaries are important in every area of your life, in your business, in your personal life. Boundaries need to be set up emotionally, physically, mentally, every area, spiritually. And the way you determine what needs boundaries in your life is think of the situations that don't make you feel uncomfortable or that don't stress you out. And then in those situations, you have to look at whether or not you can tolerate them versus the degree to which they make you feel stressed out and uncomfortable. If you can tolerate them, then you can probably live with them. But if you can't tolerate them, if they move over into the area of being uncomfortable or really making you feel stressed, then that's a sign that that's an area where you have to set up a boundary. So that's your measure. That's the way you weigh the situation and determine whether or not you need to set up a boundary. So you need to guard your time. We are here talking mostly about business, but what we talk about, it dribbles over into every area of your life. But you need to guard your time, and it's not guarding our time very often. That's what causes us to become overcommitted and causes us to be stretched out. So because we're women, because we don't know how to say no, it's so much easier to just say yes to everything. We become stressed out, we become overcommitted, and that, ladies, is going to affect every area of your life. So this is why you need to set up boundaries, okay? What happens when you don't set up boundaries? What happens when you are always available? I have a health coaching practice, and a lot of you on here are health coaches and coaches of all different varieties. If you've got clients tapping into you all day long, like, hey, can I eat ketchup? Hey, I got this donut and I'm really having a hard time fighting the temptation of this donut, and I need this and I need that, and where can I buy a food scale? If you have that going on 24 hours a day, let me tell you what you've done. You have no structure, but you have become a total pushover. You have given up control of your time to someone else. You are letting the world control you. You are having no say, no control in your life. And no, that's not a good thing, because what's it doing? When you respond that readily to anyone, you've created the expectation that you always will. So if they expect to hear from you all the time, then they're going to be really pissed off when you don't answer their text in 5 minutes. And they're not going to know what's wrong. It just makes me think of like a situation with my mom, which is kind of a different situation, but is going to feed into this. But if she tries to call me on my home phone and doesn't get me, and then tries to call me on my cell phone and doesn't get me, and I don't respond in 10 minutes, I am dead on the side of the road, because that's where she's gone in her mind. When in reality, I was probably in the shower or I was in a meeting. So this is the danger of the fact that we are so easily accessible today. People expect that they can get a hold of you immediately. And if you don't set up structure and boundaries, everyone, everywhere is going to expect that. And that's not a good thing. This takes me back to the fact, like how do you set up boundaries, especially like emotionally, physically. And listen, a lot of times you're afraid to set up boundaries because you're afraid you're going to get people upset. You're afraid people are going to be angry, because it means you're going to start saying no to things. It means you're going to start calling people out on their bullshit. And I think of a real emotional boundary that I've had to set even just recently. I told you how my mom runs to conclusions. And that's like her the Italian stressed out mom who worries about everything. She worries about everything. And if something doesn't happen when it's supposed to happen, she starts creating this story in her head that becomes this monster. And it's just, it's crazy because it's like the reality is this big and the story becomes that big. And it's kind of human nature where you might only have a skeleton of information. You might have this much fact, but we feel like we have to complete things. We feel like we have to flesh that in. But what we take is we take a skinny little skeleton and we turn it into a 400-pound monster. And most of that monster is stuff we've created in our head. And my family can tend to do this a lot. My siblings, my mom can tend to be like, oh, they haven't heard from their son in like 3 weeks. Like, oh my gosh, it must be his new wife must be like really, I know it's her. She's monopolizing him time. She won't let him call his mom anymore, yada, yada. Well, all we know is that his family hasn't heard from him, and it may be a couple days. First off, we're turning that into maybe a couple months. And all the other stuff is stuff we've made up. Well, number one, you're making up stuff like it's none of your business. But number two, making up stories like that almost always lead to a place of judgment. You are becoming judgmental because when you start making up stories, you always end up making somebody a good guy and somebody a bad guy. We just made his wife a bad guy. And that's like, we don't know. We don't know crap. We shouldn't be telling these stories. Because my thing is far away. Let's see what Lori's saying. My mom's not Italian, but she's the same way. It doesn't take being Italian. I think Italians are worse sometimes, but that's what I've seen. But yeah, it's the same thing. So here's how I've had to deal with that, because I've realized being in that situation, I can't tolerate it anymore. It definitely crosses over into an area that makes me very uncomfortable and really, really stresses me out. And listen, I'm not perfect. I'm not saying by any means, many of you on here know me really well. So, I can go to that dark place as quick as anybody else, but I'm trying so hard to be better and not do that. I want to live in a world where we seek to just be kind to each other. And when you start making up stories, somebody's always getting thrown under the bus. I don't want to live there anymore. So what happens now? I've realized that. I've acknowledged it and realized that stresses me out really bad. I've started just leaving the room when that conversation starts. I just get up and go do something else. That happened at my mom's one day that we were helping her undecorate her house from the holidays. I just got up and went back to work, and I didn't say a thing because I've tried to address it in the past. And when I address it, it just turns into a big fight because it's like, we're not being judgmental. We're just concerned and we're this. And I personally can't deal with it anymore. So I'm starting to just walk away from it and do something else. If it happens in my own house, I get up and go do the dishes. I just get up and go do something. So figure out what areas of your life need to be protected and start setting boundaries. And that's given me such a relief, such a breath of fresh air. So we've already created that if you don't set up boundaries, if you don't have restrictions, you've just given up control of your life. Everybody's going to control you. They're going to expect that if they email you, they're going to hear back from you in 5 minutes. So shout out to Audra Hammer Ross. She's not in this group, I don't think, but if you want, I can totally hook you up to her. She is a LinkedIn professional. She writes LinkedIn profiles, helps you write resumes, helps you to have a really strong presence, whether you're going for a new job or you want a good LinkedIn profile. But she just posted something not too long ago that she saw in an email. And this is a beautiful example. And it was reading this that made me realize I wanted to talk about this today. But here's a disclaimer. I'm going to read this that somebody put on the bottom of their email. They say, please note, to allow clients' projects priority and maximize creativity, I check email at the following hours, at the following times, 8 a.m., 12 p.m., and 4 p.m. daily. If this is an urgent matter, please use the number in my signature line. I thought that was brilliant. I thought it was so brilliant for somebody to set up that boundary because you know what? We all live in a world where, sometimes 11 o'clock at night, you just feel like pulling out your computer and doing a little bit of work. And, maybe you're going to take a nap the next day or relax. Whatever the deal is, we're working 24/7 these days, or we're working globally and across the nation. So my son might be sending me something, but he lives in Hawaii. There's a 6-hour time difference. So for whatever the reason, we're working at all different kinds of strange hours today. But if somebody has defined a structure like that, then even though I might be shooting them an email at 11 o'clock at night, I'm not expecting them to be looking at it at 11 o'clock at night, even if they're up. I know, and I don't expect them to look at it until the next morning. So I know that within those 3 hours a day, those 3 time slots a day, that's when they're going to be checking email. So if I send them something at 9 a.m., I know they're not checking it till noon. If it's an emergency, I can call them. But if it's not, they have set up structure. And that gives me the freedom to know I can shoot them stuff anytime, but I'm not like trying to monopolize their time. But that structure is beneficial to me and to them because I know what to expect. And they've set up boundaries that are going to affect them in so many different ways. So think about this. We've talked about this when we've talked about focusing and things like that. But if you say you're only going to check your emails 1 or 2 or 3 times a day, do it. And here's what's really important. If you sit and work at your computer all day, turn off your notifications. Because if you have a pop-up notification and you're working on a project that somebody just sent you an email, you humanly are going to have to just glance at it. You might not read the whole thing, but you might glance at it. That's doing the same damage as if you actually look at it and say, oh, let me respond to that real quick, and then I'm done. So you jump on, you respond to it. It might only take you a minute, but here's what's happening. Whether you just looked at it or whether you responded it, you have cut your productivity by 20%. This is scientifically proved because you have switched your focus, done something else, even if you've only switched it for a second to just glance at that message, but then to come back and to get back into what you're doing, 20% of your productivity is going down the toilet. That's the number one bad thing you've done. You've robbed yourself of 20% of your time. The second bad thing you've done is you set up an expectation with that person that if they call, you will instantly respond. And this is not going to be productive. This is not going to be productive or helpful in any area of your life. Boundaries are critical. I don't want to miss these. Amy says, I walk out of the room while they are talking. Did I not say that? I don't know. Maybe I said something different. Rosie says, my daughter's voice coach always sends emails between 1 to 3 a.m. I used to tell her to go get some sleep. Hey, you know what? Maybe she gets a full night. I'm a night owl. I'm up until 12 or 1, but I get a good solid 8 hours sleep every night. So the thing is, Rosie, that's on her. But the thing is, when are you going to, you can have structure as to when you're going to read them. I'm not going to look at my emails until whenever. But yeah, it's crazy. People do things at crazy times. But you're in control of your time, so be the boss of your time. We're the lady bosses, right? So, again, what constitutes an emergency? Structure. I've set up structure in my health coaching practice. When I sign up new clients, we touch base the first few days, but after that, we talk once a week. I immediately set up that structure. We talk on Monday or we talk on Tuesday. So they get the choice of Monday or Tuesday, and they get the choice of daytime or nighttime. So there's enough time for it to accommodate their schedule, but it's setting up structure for me. And that has so many benefits. Number one, just the fact that you set up structure. I always tell them, call me if you need anything. Otherwise, I'll talk to you next week. But because I've set up one structure, they don't call me and they don't bombard me with questions. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten on a call with a client and they said, oh, hang on, I have a list of questions for you. They knew we were going to talk. It was structured. They know that they're going to hear from me Monday night between 7:30, and they are ready with their questions. But they're not calling me 100 times during the week saying, oh my God, we had donuts at work today and I was so stressed, but I did okay. I pulled through it, or I ate one and now I'm beating myself up, or, oh my God, the scale is not my friend today. Whatever it is, there are a million tiny little things they can be calling you about all the time. But I'm not your 24-hour therapist. I am your health coach who is going to support you, and I'm going to support you in an excellent fashion. But I'm not helping you, and I'm not helping myself by being available to you 24 hours a day for just like this or that or this or that. Now, if it's truly important, that's a totally different thing. But you've got to decide what's really important. Being tempted by a donut is not a life or death situation. And I can't make myself available 24 hours a day for things like that. Okay. Does that make sense? But you've got to define that. And then I'll just go one step farther and then we're going to wrap this up. Physical boundaries. Okay. We're business owners. We're entrepreneurs. We need workspace. You need a dedicated space to work. Set up those boundaries too. Think about physical boundaries in that sense too. Do you have a desk? Do you have drawers? If you have a desk, hey, the whole family isn't going to keep dumping all their crap on your desk, okay? Set up those boundaries and that structure, and then, expect people to live within that structure. So to wrap it all up, boundaries equate to freedom, and we need freedom because we need balance in our lives, right? So you're not going to have balance in your life unless you can learn how to unplug. And if you don't set up boundaries and you're available 24/7, then you're not unplugging. So if you want balance, you need to unplug. And if you need to unplug, then you have to unplug. So do it. I'll read one last comment and then I'll close. Lori says, my phone is set up to go on Do Not Disturb every evening. Mine is the same thing, Lori. Mine goes till 10. Mine is 10 at night until 6:30 in the morning, so that at nighttime, it's not disrupting my sleep, because you don't want to do that either. Good sleep is so critical to your health. So I do that too. I have Do Not Disturb on my phone. My phone doesn't make a peep until 6:30 in the morning, and then I'll start getting notifications. But you make that work so that you get a certain amount of time and boundaries to protect your health. If you think your health's not important, then that's a whole other topic we have to discuss. So that's it today for boundaries, but I want to reiterate one thing I talked about at the beginning of the meeting for those that came on late. In a few weeks, I want to do a Lady Bosses Live Q&A. So I'm going to post something today, but I want you to think about some questions you have in any area, whether it's organization, time management, boundaries, comparing yourself, getting new clients, you name it. We may have talked about it, but you know what? I read The Strong-Willed Child every year, because every time you hear something different jumps out at you because you're in a different place and you might be hearing it in a different way. So give me some of your questions on Facebook in the group under the post. But I'm going to take live questions when we do it too. So we'll do it live, but we'll do that in a few weeks. So that is it. It's 10:22. I hope you ladies have an awesome week and have a great weekend. And we'll see you here next Tuesday, same time, same place. Bye.